My name is Andrew Ballard, and I'm co-owner with Camp Creek Native Plants with my father, and that's where we're at today. I was going to speak to y'all about foraging, especially springtime foraging, and really what got me into foraging. And really, it's simple. I love being out in nature, and that's one way for me to get out there is to go see what's coming up, see what's edible. I don't necessarily go and eat what I'm picking. If I do pick it, I eat it, but I've gotten to the point now where I just like to go out and observe and see what's coming up and see what I can find. I would not call myself an expert by any means. This is something that I've just learned to do on my free time. I look at YouTube videos. National Audubon has great books that you can read that have all the different kind of plants and mushrooms, and then it tells you if it's edible and what parts of that plant are edible. I just love to learn, so that's what's kept me out there, kept me searching. What will I find around that next corner that I haven't seen? Will I be able to identify that plant, and is that plant edible? That's just what keeps me going. It's like a treasure hunt. I think one reason why people are really getting into foraging is to have some sense of food security. I think that it's a good idea for all of us, whether you're eating the food or not. I think it's a good idea to have the knowledge to be able to look at something and tell, oh, that's edible or that's not edible. I think it's just a good option to have. I'm not a doomsday type person. I'm a very positive person. So that's not what got me out there, the idea of there being a scarcity of food, but there's a lot of people who do think that that's a problem in the future, a scarcity of food, and so they want to know what they can find in their backyard and what they can eat in their backyard. Not only that, but a lot of these plants, the pharmaceutical companies gather their medications from these plants. Most of these medications that are being made aren't totally synthesized 100%. They're finding a compound in a plant, or they find a compound in a mushroom, and then they extract that compound and then do what they do to make it a more sellable product. A lot of this stuff you can find in the woods in your backyard that have these chemicals in them. However, you do need to have the knowledge on how to properly use these plants that may contain some medicine. It's not something you just want to go out there and start picking stuff and eating it. That's not how I would go about it. What I like to do is find the plant, identify the plant, and then Google from there, is this edible? Maybe talk to somebody that has eaten it in the past, how did it treat them? Because even some edible mushrooms, not everybody can eat. So it's really, you just kind of have to test and see. And so what they say is whenever you're foraging for wild food, just eat a little piece. If you have a mushroom, say a morel mushroom, and they're pretty easy to identify, but that's one of the mushrooms that some people get sick and some people don't. So really it's a good idea to eat a small portion, see how that treats you. If it makes you upset to your stomach, then you may not be one of the people that can ingest that food. If you eat that little piece and nothing happens, then you can move on from there, eat a little bit more next time.
Do you lead like foraging trips?
I do. Usually once in the spring and then once in the fall, I like to take people out and kind of show them what to look for. There's all sorts of things coming up right now in the plant kingdom, like smilax. People eat you wouldn't believe it, it's that vine that has thorns all over it, but people eat the fresh green shoot that comes up. You can walk out in the woods right now and you can look around and see what's being eaten. The deer are all over it right now. The smilax they're eating, which is something you can eat. The yellow wood sorrel they're eating, which is another thing you can eat. It's kind of got like a sour flavor to it, so people use it like a garnish. Fiddleheads off of ferns are very popular in the foraging cookbook. You see those all the time. It's on the front of the book. There's more than likely a fiddlehead on there. In our area, we don't really have to worry so much about what kind of fern we're eating, but there are plenty of ferns that are not edible, and you'll even see on the internet that they are edible. One being the bracken fern. It's highly cancerous, and there's tons of misinformation out there about that plant. So there you go. Even the internet can tell you wrong. So it's really something that you need to tread lightly. However, there are plenty of things that are, a dead giveaway. You shouldn't have any problem with identifying the morel mushroom. There's nothing that looks like it. Bracken fern is an invasive species, so it shouldn't even be here. And we don't really have them so much in our area, but if you go out west, bracken ferns are taken over. And that's one people thought, well, it's invasive, but we'll just eat it, we'll use it as food. But it's not, it's not quite that way. It's actually pretty poisonous. So that's not a route that you can go for eradicating that plant.
When you do these foraging trips, what kind of turnout do you have for that?
Typically 10 to 15 people. We'll go out in the spring. I have a little piece of property down here that I like to take people to. It's a beautiful, beautiful old growth forest, I'll call it. And you go there and you do not feel like you're in New Albany, Mississippi. You feel like you're, in the Pacific Northwest with huge trees and just lush green everywhere. But we'll go out typically for, 2 hours or so. And I just identify plants, let people take pictures, let people taste some of the things that we're foraging. And really that's it. I'll do that in the spring because there's different species that are going to be present in the spring, and then there'll be other species present in the fall. I love the fall for mushroom hunting, especially in Mississippi. We have perfect weather in the fall. It cools off, we start getting some rains, and the mushrooms will start to pop. Last year we had a rough year because of some drought conditions, but the fall is really my favorite time to go out with groups of people because there's also plants coming up at the same time that are edible and forageable. Right now, I have people asking to go on morel foraging trips, and I think everybody's heard of morel. It's probably the most popular foraged mushroom out there, or the most sought after, I'll say. Fetches a big price at the market if you can find enough to be able to sell. And they just make a great, great edible. So that's one thing that if I took a group out now, that would be one thing that I would look for immediately, would be the morel mushroom, because I know that it would be coming up right now. As far as mushrooms go, not so much. Morels are they're ephemeral. We're really learning more and more about morels, so people are starting to cultivate them at home, but it's a highly advanced thing to try to do. What you could do is, if you find a log that's, that has oyster mushroom growing out of it, and you positively identified that as an oyster mushroom, sure, you can take that log home, take it with you, put it in the shade, make sure that you're watering it, make sure you're taking care of it. I tend to shy people away from doing that, to be honest, because what typically happens is the person takes that log from the woods, they take it home, and then they forget about it. And when you've just taken a major food source out of the woods and wasted it, you can go out in the woods right now and watch the squirrels pick mushrooms and hang them up in the trees to dry. It's the first source of protein really available for them at this time of the year. And so for you to steal that from them in that way, I'm not against foraging mushrooms and cutting them or picking them and eating them and take them home with you. But if you're taking a big log out of the woods, I promise you that squirrel knows that mushroom grows on that log every year. And so if you learn that mushroom grows on that log every year, why not just go visit that log every year instead of taking it home with you? Because the squirrels know, the deer know, we're not the only ones out there foraging, and they have a better idea of the time that it's going to come up. They're waiting on that food source. And so I kind of shy away from digging plants, especially. Don't dig. Wait till the fall for seed, or come to Camp Creek and buy some plants that we've grown from seed. I just shy away from that. If you tell one person, yeah, it's fine to go dig this up, then everybody and their uncle will go and dig that plant up. And we really need to keep the food in the woods. I'm a forager and I love to forage, but I also have this idea of I don't need to. So I can go to the market and buy what I need to keep myself healthy and keep myself full, whereas your animals in the woods can't really do that necessarily. So it's best practice, if you want to take some of these plants home with you, wait for the seed, grow the seed at home, or revisit that mushroom log that you know. Say every November, I have a few logs that I know are going to grow lion's mane mushroom, either November or December or January. And so I'll go, on those 3 months, I'll go once a week. I'll just drive by and stick my head out the door and glance at it and see if it's fruiting. If it's fruiting, then I'll run over there and pick it. If I happen to miss it, so be it. It's something found it and something's going to eat it. The reason I got so interested in it, one day I was at my parents' house across from George's, and they have a patch of woods, or not they, but there's a patch of woods behind that neighborhood. And I was driving around the road and I saw this big white, it looked like a dinner plate. And I thought somebody had just thrown their dinner plate outside on the ground. And I had to stop and see what it was because it was in a weird spot. And I walked by and I bent down, and it was a giant mushroom. And I'd never in my life seen a mushroom. I mean, it was 12 inches across, huge mushroom. And so I picked it and I'm looking at it, and naturally I want to know what it is. And so I Googled it, and it came up as an amanita mushroom. And most amanitas are toxic, especially around here. We don't really have many edible amanitas. There's like one, but I digress. I found this giant mushroom, Googled it, and then realized that it was highly toxic, and that it's a pretty common mushroom that grows in neighborhoods or like freshly manicured lawns. And so then that got me going down the road of, well, what else is out there and what else is toxic? Mushrooms in themselves are mysterious. And I think that's what draws me to them, because you don't see the organism at all. When you see a mushroom pop up from the ground, you can think of that as like the flower of the mushroom. The actual mushroom is underground, and it's in a mycelial mat underground. It'll flower or fruit and produce that mushroom, much like a plant flowers and produces the flower, for reproduction purposes. However, mushrooms, they pop up, they send out their spores, and then they go away. They're gone in a matter of days. And I think that is one thing that really made me interested, is what are they doing? Why are they, they're here today and gone tomorrow. How is that? How is that useful, really? What are they doing? And then I just dove off into a wormhole and learned that they're coming up in the spring, summer, or fall. The mushroom, it'll send out its spores to reproduce, and then it goes directly back into the ground, because that's how it preserves all its energy. If the largest living organism on the planet is a mushroom that grows out in Oregon. I think it's like 2,000 square kilometers in size. Massive, massive. And it's a honey mushroom, and it is currently growing towards the redwood forest, and people are like, oh, we got to do something, we got to stop it, but that's something, I don't know if that can be stopped, and I don't know if we need to stop that, but they're just mysterious, and I love to find things. And so when I go foraging and you see something from far off, or even before you've seen anything, you have an idea of where you might find that mushroom. Say morels, you're going to be looking for ash trees and elm trees, so therefore you need to know what an elm tree looks like, you need to know what an ash tree looks like. You need to know that morels aren't going to fruit unless the soil is at least 50 degrees Fahrenheit, so you need to know what your soil temps are at. And for that to happen, we need to have nights in the 60s solidly, or nights in the 50s at least, which we've had, so morels are starting to pop up. There's just so many little nuances that are just very interesting to me, and I love to learn the way the world works, and why we need mushrooms. And what I have learned in this process is that none of this would be here without mushrooms. Fungus is, they break down the soil, and the soil is what brings life to the planet. So if you want to take a step back, mushrooms do that. Without the mushroom, then plants aren't able to take up the nitrogen that's in the soil, because what the fungus does is it breaks down that nitrogen into a usable medium for the plant to uptake. So without the mushroom, the plant doesn't live. And you can actually, they've taken like cross sections of plant roots, and there are more fungal cells in the plant than there are plant cells. which is kind of crazy to think about. So there's a mutual relationship. The fungus feeds the plant, and the plant feeds the fungus, and so one cannot live without the other. Very interesting.
What if you had a wooded area that you wanted to start certain mushrooms in? Is that advisable
Um,
or doable?
yeah, you could do it especially with something like an oyster mushroom. If you have, the only thing with that is that you have to inoculate a fresh tree. So it would have to be something that you timed either after a storm. You've got about 2 weeks, where if you had a tree blower over in your yard, you've got about 2 weeks to get to it before all the other fungus that's floating around gets to it. If that fungus gets to it first, then you have no chance of successfully growing the fungus that you want to grow on that log, because you got to think there are so many spores floating around that. So when you inoculate a mushroom log with, say, we're going to say oyster mushroom, you're hammering in that mushroom mycelium, which is the body of the mushroom, and you're hoping that that mycelium will devour the log before anything else does. And so if you've waited over 2 weeks, then more than likely other fungus is already pretty much ubiquitous throughout the log. You might not see it, but it's there. And so when you go and try to inoculate oyster into that log, it's going to get outcompeted by what the fungus that's already there. So if you wanted to do this in the woods, what I do is I cut a tree down that's suitable, typically like a hardwood or an oak tree. I look for one 6 to 8 inches, smaller tree that I can handle, and then you would cut that down. At that point, you wait about a week and a half, 2 weeks, and then you inoculate it. You have to wait 2 weeks so all the sap that's running kind of gets out of the log, because the sap has a bunch of antifungal properties. You know, trees are fighting against this as part of their life, as they're fighting against having fungus inside of their wood, because that deteriorates their wood. So they have all kind of antifungal, antibacterial properties that you have to wait for that to kind of die off in a log. If you wait too long, other mushrooms get it, and you won't be able to grow what you're wanting to grow. But yeah, it's very possible. I would start out with something like an oyster mushroom, or a lion's mane mushroom, or a reishi mushroom, something like that.
Is that why they're trying to stop that giant mushroom from growing?
They want to stop it because we love the redwoods so much. Really just for, and it would hurt me too to see the redwoods go. But you know, if it's a natural process, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. They don't want it to happen because it's a huge tourist attraction, bringing lots of money to the parks for you know, those huge redwoods bringing lots of money. Not only that, and they're beautiful. We need the redwoods. They're quintessential to that ecosystem. You know, on the West Coast, they're thousands of years old trees, old growth trees, which support who knows how much life. And so, yeah, there are reasons to be kind of worried about it. However, I'm a firm believer that our planet has checks and balances, and as long as we're not throwing those off too far in one direction, it'll figure itself out. Redwoods have been here for a millennia. I don't think that mushroom is going to do anything really that bad to them. If anything happens to them, it'll be our doing, the redwoods for sure. I still do personally. I grow shiitakes for myself, and I do some log workshops where I'll go and I cut the tree down for you. I prepare the mycelium, the dowel plugs for you. They call it spawn. And then we'll have a workshop where I have all the materials needed, and the person comes and they make their own shiitake log, and you put wax on it to make sure that it's sealed so nothing else can get in there. But as far as doing it for the public, I've kind of stopped doing that. My focus right now is with Camp Creek and growing the plants. But you know, that information's out there. YouTube is a great tool. It's where I learn pretty much everything, Google and YouTube. And you can watch, there's thousands of videos of people inoculating shiitake logs, and they'll tell you exactly how to go about it. It's really fun to do. You can even order the grow blocks online that are they're sealed in plastic. You bring it home and you just cut a little slit in it, spray it with water, and in a week you've got mushrooms. So there's different ways, there's different ways of doing it. But as far as that, yeah, I've kind of stepped away from that a little bit. I still do it for myself. I still am out foraging all the time, just because that's something that keeps me, I don't want to say sane, but it's something that brings me a lot of peace. I get a lot of joy out of being by myself in the woods and on my hands and knees, searching, looking for the tiniest little, most obscure flower, that nobody's seen, but to me it's cool, and that's what keeps me going back out there. Yes, shiitake is a hardwood loving fungus, so you would need a hardwood. Oak tree is going to be the best around here, and I think oak tree is probably the best in general, red or white. I think people say red oak's a little bit better, but I've used both and never noticed any difference. It's nice to be able to do what they call force fruiting on something like shiitake. You've got your shiitake log. Naturally, that log will fruit once in the spring and then once in the fall. However, there's ways around that. What I used to do and what I still do with my personal logs is after they fruit in the spring, I'll harvest those mushrooms and then I'll let the log rest for about 2 to 3 weeks, sometimes a month, and then I soak it in water. So I have a trash can that I fill with water, and I put my shiitake logs into the water and with the weight on top, and I let those sit in the water for 12 hours or so. And what I'm doing is simulating. This is all theoretical science, but I think it's true because in Asia they've been doing this for thousands of years with the shiitake. They'll soak the log in water, and it simulates a monsoon, their monsoon season, spring, so that's when the shiitake would naturally want to flush. They then get the log out of the water and they slam it on the ground, maybe hit it with a hammer a couple times to make the mushroom think that, once again, a monsoon would be pretty windy, and so the tree would sustain some damage. Where that tree sustained damage, oxygen's able to enter. So like if the tree cracked, oxygen can enter. The oxygen is what signals the shiitake to fruit. And so they go through this process of soaking it, they'll hit it with a hammer, and they're tricking this log into have been going through a monsoon, and like clockwork, the shiitakes will fruit again. It's crazy. So about every month, they'll do this with the shiitake log, soak it, pull it out, hit it a couple times. You'll see these little micro fissures. You're not hitting it hard, just tiny little cracks for the oxygen to get in, and then within a couple weeks, you've got shiitakes again. So there's a bunch of I don't want to say citizen science, but it's science that's not written in a book. These methods, somebody would tell you there's no way that the mushroom knows that that's what's happening. But I would tell you, if this group of people have been doing this for 2,000 years, they have a pretty good reason why they're doing it, and it must work. So I do it, and it works. I have great success with it. So they definitely have that figured. They're the mushroom growers in China. They grow pretty much maybe 80% of the world's mushrooms because they've been doing it for thousands of years, and they've got it figured out. They have figured out how to grow morel mushrooms, which nobody thought that was possible, because there's so many interactions that have to go on in the soil with the microorganisms and the bacteria. They all play a role with the fungus. So some scientists went out there and found exactly what was keying these morels to fruit and what exactly they were eating. We still don't know, in America, we still don't know what they eat. I could go ask, hey, what trees do you search around for morel mushroom hunting? I could ask 5 people. All 5 people are going to tell me something different because we really don't know. However, ash and elm, all of them are going to say ash and elm, but then everybody's got some tree, tulip poplar. They found 50 under a tulip poplar tree at their house last year. So we really don't know. However, over in Asia, they've really got it figured out, and it's not something they're kind of safeguarding. It's not something they're keeping secret. It's just not something that's caught on in America yet. They eat mushrooms every single meal. They have a fungus because they really believe that it is extremely healthy for you and that it has benefits for you and your health. And I do too. Mushrooms are one of the few compounds where you can find this molecule called a beta-glucan, and beta-glucans are being studied intensely right now by us in the West for fighting cancer, fighting tumors, because some of these mushrooms can persist on the side of a tree for 10 years, never deteriorate, never degrade, no algae will grow on them, nothing will grow on them. So there's something in the mushroom itself that's able to keep disease away and to fight outside forces, other fungus, other bacteria, and they're actually finding that there's some truth to that within our Western medicine. So people are eating. I know Paul Stamets, he's a big mushroom guy. He's been marketing like turkey tail mushrooms as anti-tumor and cancer fighting. There's lion's mane is anti-tumor and like anti-inflammatory. All these mushrooms have different levels of these beta-glucans in them, and so, you know, like the reishi, your turkey tails, and your lion's manes are very high in it, and so that's why they're always up there. If you look up medicinal mushrooms, you're going to see those three every single time because they're just packed full of the stuff that you want.
Do you ever find chaga here?
It's not a species that grows around here, unfortunately, and that's like number one as far as positive health benefits. It's a more northern growing species. It likes the colder temperatures.
If you come across mushrooms in your yard or whatever, what's the best thing that you can do? Leave them alone or pick them?
Leave them alone, because you can get a good ID of the mushroom. You can touch any mushroom. Let me start there. No mushroom is toxic enough to where you can't touch it. None that grow here, at least. I think there's one on planet Earth, and it's somewhere in Asia. And it's an orange, spiky. You would look at it and be like, I don't want to touch that. Any mushroom around here you can touch. You can actually taste any mushroom. That's kind of a weird topic, but you can even, the Amanita bisporigera, the most toxic mushroom we have in our area, I could take a bite of that mushroom, chew it up, really get a taste of it, and then spit it out. I'll be fine. It's the actual ingestion of, so if I were to swallow even my spit that was created in that process, that would be toxic. But you can get a taste, you can get the flavor of any mushroom by doing that and then spitting it out. So that's one thing, you know, that would do if I took somebody foraging. I would have them taste different mushrooms, you know, that I know aren't toxic, so it's not going to hurt them if they do swallow. But it's just something, it's interesting. I smell them, bend down and smell a mushroom, because your smell is your number one memory indicator. So your memory is, if you smell something, think about it, it can take you back to a 5-year-old memory, just a smell. And so when I walk into the woods, I'll bend down and smell the mushroom. And it's crazy, I know, but a year from now, I'll be walking through the woods and I'll catch a whiff of something and, oh, that smelled like, and my brain goes right to it, oh, that smelled like a morel mushroom. And then I know I'm gonna walk this way to see if I can find any, and 9 times out of 10, you'll find them just by the smell alone. And that goes with several different mushrooms I can kind of smell and know. Fungus you can smell in general. So if you catch a good whiff of fungus and you know you're out mushroom hunting, I'll turn around and walk that way, because obviously there's something growing there for me to check out. There's all different little cues like that you just have to, once you get out there and you get started in it, there's little things that you'll figure out that help you as far as the foraging process goes. I get a lot of the enjoyment in the whole process is me being by myself, because I am out there on my hands and knees. I don't want, if somebody drives by, what is he doing right now, on the side of the road? I'm trying to figure out what this is, I'm bending down to smell this mushroom or smell the plant. Dad jokes with me all the time. I think red buckeye, and you can go out there and smell one. It smells like Campbell's chicken noodle soup. And so if I go out in the woods in Tippah County on our property, I can smell Campbell's chicken noodle soup in the air, and that tells me the buckeyes are starting to leaf out. And so there's all kind of cues that the more you get out there, the more you learn. And I just it makes me think about like the Native Americans, and knowledge and the information that they had that we would have just like, that's not necessary to have. Today's day and age, maybe not, but I go back, I think about it, like they were doing that. They were smelling the mushroom. They were smelling this because they didn't have the internet. That was one way that they could learn something, remember something, and so they're doing all that. So I like to be by myself when I'm out there. I don't know. It's not weird, but some people might think it's weird. You know, I'm even out in my front yard on South Central on my hands and knees looking at if I have plants out there, you know, it's all native, and I have hundreds of different flowers that come up out there. I'll be on my hands and knees with my phone trying to get the perfect shot of the flower, and there's cars driving by, you know, in the back of my head. I'm like, that kid, they think I'm crazy or I'm weird, but so be it. So be it.
So you can even do that, and you don't have to go out into the woods to do this.
Oh no, I brought right here a couple species that are probably in your yard right now. Let me show you. Can you see that?
Yeah.
The flower, the leaves, the stems, and the tuber of this plant are all edible, 100% edible plant. This is Spring Beauty. So you probably have this growing in your lawn right now. You can eat, like I said, the flowers edible, the entire plant. And actually down here, I don't know if you can see it. Down here, there is a solid, this is solid, and it tastes like a peanut. And this is one of the main things, we were just talking about Native Americans. This would have been, right now, this would have been number one on their plate, or number one food source. Because, you know, with enough of these, you've got mashed potatoes, pretty much. Or with enough of them, it tastes just, I'm not gonna eat it, but, you know, they'll cook them down, boil them to make mashed potatoes, roast them to make a peanut, and it actually does taste like a peanut. So they would, and you can look out here in this field, they are everywhere. It is a solid mat of this white and pink flower right now, and so you can imagine, yeah, that's something they would have been all over, because it's really easy to forage, it's really easy to identify, and the whole thing's edible. And it is packed full of vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin K, vitamin E. Pretty much all the vitamins that are necessary for life are in this one plant. And then the one that gets sprayed out of your yard, that's a common weed that gets sprayed out of people's yards. Why? I don't know, because even the foliage looks like grass. And so when you mow your yard after spring, you'd never see this plant because the leaves look like grass. This is a dandelion, which I know everybody is familiar with. Once again, this whole plant is edible from the flower to the roots. Dandelions have big, thick, juicy roots. And people actually will brew the roots down in water and use it as a coffee substitute. There's actually a good bit of caffeine in the root of this plant. So that makes me, I like to think about, you know, how a Native American what they would have done with this, you know, and I can picture them before a hunt waking up and boiling some dandelion root and taking big glugs of dandelion root juice and then going out there all hyped up on dandelions, you know, hyped up. It'd be nothing like our coffee, a dandelion. Coffee is way more caffeine than this, but to them, that's what they had. And so you know they had to get some kind of feel-good energy out of it, and then they go hunt. I kind of like to tie things in like that. My imagination goes crazy. It's a great idea to know, like, to go out there and be able to identify and then be able to cook it in a way that you can palate it, because that's a lot of the problem for me. Some of these things people are cooking are just very strong flavored, and that's all I can taste in it, you know. Like chickweed's pretty strong to me, so whenever somebody makes like a chickweed pesto, I know immediately I'm not gonna like it, really, because of the strong green flavor that it has. The button mushrooms from the grocery store, don't get those, because new studies are coming out and saying that they're highly cancerous.
Really?
Mm-hmm. If you're a button mushroom eater, it might be worth looking into that.
That's gonna be different from portobello's, right?
It is a portobello.
Oh, okay.
Which is, it's on the hush hush right now because I don't know if you've watched that documentary with Paul Stamets in it, and in the middle of it he says, I can't talk about this because that's what it is. It's cancer-causing agents in button mushrooms, and then the portobellos that are being sold are like, have very high levels of hydrazine, something that's very cancerous in it, and they're trying to keep it hush hush because you can cook it at a certain temperature to get rid of most of that. But you find these at salad bars. People are eating them raw. You never eat any mushroom raw, ever. It doesn't matter what kind of mushroom it is. You're not supposed to eat it raw. You can eat, there's like one or two that you can eat raw, but for the most part, like a button mushroom, if you feel that stem and it's real hard, you definitely don't want to eat that because your stomach cannot break down uncooked fungal cells. It just can't do it. So it's going to give you stomach upset or cancer.
Wow. Wow.
For one, there's not many people growing natives. Most nurseries are growing ornamental, Chinese, Japanese, landscaping plants. So off the start, you're just not going to find them. Was really what got us into this business was we were having a hard time sourcing these plants. We were like, well, we'll just grow them because that's the only way we can get them. Growing from seed or from plug. And it would shock you. If you tried to Google native nurseries near me, we would be the only one that popped up in probably like a 300-mile radius, which is not a good thing. We need more and more of these plants grown. We need as many as possible to be grown. That only helps us. You know, if the more people are growing natives, then more people are learning and more people know about natives. So that's only going to help us. So I think that's one of the reasons why you see people coming from all over to Camp Creek is because they don't have a native plant nursery any closer to them. Some people, like a lady this morning drove up from Tunica because she can't get these plants where she's at. And I think another thing that really sets us apart from other places is the passion. We have a great staff that are highly passionate. We are very passionate. My dad is an incredibly passionate man, and he has 100% of his focus on these native plants right now. Not only him, myself, that's what I have all these little hobbies. I like to keep my hands busy, and I've had to reel a lot of that in this year, especially because we're growing, and which is a great thing, but that just means, you know, we have more pots we need, more plants we need to pot, more houses we need to hit up for landscaping, which is a great thing because we're extremely passionate about what we do. We love when people come here asking questions. Please, if you have a question about a plant, come out here with it and ask us. You're going to find much better service here than you would at like a Lowe's. And I don't mean any offense by this, but the person working at Lowe's does not know the plants they're selling, and that's not on them. They're not horticulturalists. They don't have any background in it. They're just there for a wage. But we're here for more than that, more than a wage. We want to educate people. We want people to learn the intricacies and the importance of these plants in our ecosystem. Because if we do, and I know this sounds doomsday, but if we do lose all of our native plants, I really don't even know, like, it will be very bad. It will be very bad. If you think we have a mosquito problem now, you wait. And they're just going to keep spraying and spraying and spraying to kill the mosquitoes, which is going to kill the bees, which is going to kill. It's an issue that needs to be addressed now. And one thing that we can do with that is stop planting the monocultured. If you just built a house, try not to put sod over an acre of property. That's, you don't need that much sod. Try to rewild some of the property that you do have. You would be blown away by the amount of pollinating insects that you find if you just leave a little patch of your yard, let it grow up a little bit. I'm not asking you to have 6-foot tall patch of grass in front of your front door. But if you're lucky enough to have some property behind your house that's away from the view of people, if you're worried about what people think, do it where nobody can see it. It's going to be just as beneficial where nobody can see it as if it was in front of your house. With the big wow factor, it's just as beneficial. Which is a part of the education process, is getting people to learn that you're not going to buy a plant out here. It's not going to flower for 8 months out of the year. People want color. They want their plants to start flowering in the spring and then stop in the fall. When our native plants, not realistic, for one. Our native plants are way more intelligent than that. Our plants are smart enough to know they need to come up, they need to flower, they need to set seed for next year. That's intelligent, in my opinion. If a plant, if you have something out here that's blooming for 8 months out of the year, well, it's never made any seed, and so it's pretty much killing itself. If you want to think of it that way. So it's important to educate people on why some of a lot of them are beautiful plants. The majority of them are, but there are some species, that we're saying you've got to plant this, you've got to plant it, and the homeowner or somebody else might look at it and be like, that's not very attractive. We are worried about attractiveness to other people, but that plant may be the most attractive thing a bumblebee or a hummingbird has ever seen, but to you it's like, meh, it's red, that's it. It is what it is. We got to try to move away from just pleasing ourselves with the ecology, because we're not the only ones who use it. If you want your kids, grandkids to be able to enjoy the same Mississippi that you enjoyed, then it is imperative to keep these plants, to get them out there. I'm not asking you to plant 100% native at your house, but if you have a space for a pollinator garden, think about it. It is so fun to watch. If you have kids, very educational for kids to be able to go out and see this is blooming at this time. These insects need this plant to live. If they don't have it, they're gone. And that's with a lot of our native insects either feed or lay eggs on a single species. So if we remove that species, we are effectively removing a species of insect that relies on that plant. It's all interlinked. It's all tied together. And it's important that people know that. The earth it's not just for us. We are the stewards, but we're not, we are not doing our job when it comes to the stewardship. We're doing what we want to see, which is, there's going to be groups of people who always do that. But I think it would be good if some of the people that are on the fence, learn that it's not all about you. Sorry, that we're planting things that are beneficial to us, yes, but also to the local ecology, and that's really the main thing, the main reason Camp Creek's here. Everybody loves beautiful plants, so yeah, we've got lots of beautiful stuff out here, but it's not only beautiful to you and me, it's beautiful to the bumblebee that's crossing by, the hummingbird that crosses over. These plants are snapping necks when it comes to butterflies, hummingbirds, and bees. They're snapping necks. They're going to stop and feed off that plant. Where I challenge you to look at like a limelight hydrangea. Count how many insects are on that limelight hydrangea. Just one flower head. Count how many insects are on it. And then drive out here and count how many insects are on a coreopsis flower that's 1/50th the size. There will be 50 times the amount of insects on this small flower than that limelight, because they know what that is. They know what it looks like, and they know the benefit, and they know what they can get from that. Whereas the limelight, they've never seen that in their life. They don't know what that is, and they didn't evolve alongside that, so they're not going to go visit that plant, effectively removing a food source for them. So just give it some thought. If you're going to be planting anytime soon, kind of give it some thought, do some research. I promise you it will blow your mind if you really dive off into it and you start learning about the larval connections, the host connections to different species. you learn that, and it's hard not to want to go and plant something and watch. You know, it's so fun to plant milkweed, watch the monarchs come, lay the eggs on the milkweed, and monarchs are the poster child. That's one insect out of a million, you know, that do the same thing, that lay their eggs on one plant, and they eat that one plant, and they're migrating, and you know, they're the poster child for that because they're pretty. They're pretty. But yeah, buy milkweed, plant it, and then watch it. Watch the leaves just get eaten off. If the leaves are gone, then it's doing its job. The caterpillars will eat the leaves. Once they've filled up on the leaves, then they go into a chrysalis, and then you'll have monarch caterpillars or monarch butterflies, and you can watch them hatch at your house. It's really cool. Educational.